This is episode 48 of the Women in Depth podcast. The information found in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lourdes Viado. I'm really excited to share today's conversation with you. I had the privilege of speaking with Jocelyn Mercado about intuition, or our inner voice. We talk about why intuition is so important, why we stop listening to our inner voice, and how to hear the voice of intuition again. Jocelyn is a transformational life and business coach, holistic health consultant, writer, and environmentalist. She is the founder of Sacred Planet, a global community of people who seek the collective power inherent in heart-based community to dynamically co-create a brighter tomorrow. Jocelyn worked in finance and project management for 15 years before taking the leap from the corporate world to create Sacred Planet. She has been a student and practitioner of indigenous wisdom and earth-based spirituality for over 8 years. Her coaching and online programs provide a uniquely balanced approach of logic and science combined with spirit, intuition, and holistic practices. Jocelyn's mission is to guide you in breaking free from everything that holds you back, to reveal to you your unlimited, boundless potential, and guide you in building a new life centered around your heart and soul purpose, so that you can do what you love every day and make a tremendous positive difference for our world. Hi, Jocelyn, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Lourdes. Thank you so much for having me on your program. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm very excited about our conversation. I look forward to connecting with speakers, women, therapists, experts, artists who I feel really align with the themes for Women in Depth. And so just reading about your work and hearing about your work, I am excited about this conversation, and I know that it will resonate with our listeners. So Jocelyn, to start off, can you share a little bit about yourself and the work that you do?
Yes, absolutely. I am a transformational life coach and a holistic health consultant and a writer as well. And I worked in finance in the corporate world for 15 years, or a little over 15 years. But at a certain point, just realized that was not where my heart and soul was. I was just not happy. I didn't enjoy the work. It was a difficult situation with other coworkers and all kinds of things going on. So I started seeking, and I also at the same time was having quite a spiritual awakening. I had my first daughter was born in 2010, and that really shifted a lot for me in starting to see the world from a perspective of it's not just about what I need to do, but it's also about what kind of a world am I creating? What kind of a life am I modeling for this other little person, and that changes everything. So I consider that the birth of my first daughter very much an awakening point for me. So I was really on quite a spiritual search from that point on to discover, why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing in this lifetime? And how could I create a better life for her through what I do in my lifetime? So it's quite a journey that I was on, but I eventually created Sacred Planet, which is my business that I have now. And I was able to quit my corporate job and start doing coaching full time, which has been so amazing and wonderful. I've had the amazing opportunity to talk to people all around the world. My clients are mostly women, but I do have a few men that I work with as well. And just to help people to discover their life's purpose, and also to start a business or start a community or whatever it is that people are called to do to really help them break free from what's held them back in the past and move forward into what they want to create.
Wow, that's an incredible story, and I feel that so many of us can see ourselves in that, where you're at a place where maybe it's not speaking to your soul and you are not happy where you are, but it's very scary to think of changing. And then the other piece of that is something happens that changes your world, kind of helps you to shift. So that's what I was seeing as you shared where you were as you were reflecting upon this career, 15 years in finance, and then a little bit later, here comes your first daughter, and she was almost, it sounds like, the catalyst to really get you moving regarding that, where you were already.
Definitely, yes. She was definitely the catalyst. And it's very interesting how things happen. I think that, I believe very deeply that we are guided and supported at every step, and that things happen in our life to lead us, to try to nudge us closer and closer to what we're meant to be doing. And so definitely she was that. And the fact that it was kind of a negative situation at my work, helped me to make everything happen a little faster, I think.
Yeah. I think that one of the ways that we struggle sometimes is we look at these nudges or catalysts or what we call negative situations, and we just really struggle with them. And it's very difficult to see that they are an invitation, they are a push to help us make a shift to a different way of being. And I think if listeners are resonating with this, if any of them can see that wherever they're stuck at, wherever there's this fear of, pursuing something different or making changes, that there is possibly, and I feel more than likely, a deeper meaning to it.
Yes, I completely agree. And that's a huge part of what I teach in my coaching. And there are two pieces to that. One is that our greatest challenges in life are often our strongest medicine or our strongest points of wisdom. So many people have overcome really difficult challenges in their life, whether it was, problems during childhood or, things like depression and anxiety. That's something that I personally dealt with for much of my life. And then they find, many of us find that we are called to go out and, once we've learned how to overcome that, to go out and heal people from that same sort of situation. Because once we have firsthand experience of something like that's deeply affected our lives, or that even was traumatic, then we can really relate to others who may now be stuck in that spot that we found a way to get out of, right? And really help them to heal. And then the other piece to that is that so many times we need to do what we're most afraid of.
Oh my gosh, that is
in
so
order
true.
to make a big leap forward. Yes, it is so true.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think just this week posted something on one of my Facebook pages about the thing that we fear the most is really the thing that we actually need to move towards. And it's so counterintuitive because, when you think of fear, the instinctual response is to move away from it. And it's very difficult for many of us to begin to relate to fear differently,
Definitely. Yes. It can really be a tremendous signpost that's trying to guide us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen this so many times in my own life and also in my clients that I work with. So often it is that thing. It is that thing that scares us the most that we need to do. And I know for me, it was quitting my job in finance. That was my entire conception of stability in my life. It was everything that, kind of kept things on an even keel and kept the finances coming in. And I just realized at a certain point that I had to leave that job, but I didn't know how I was going to make it work. And it has turned out, since I've taken that step, when we step outside of our comfort zone, it allows us to experience life in an entirely new way. And most of the time, what we find out is that we're capable of so much more than we ever would have believed. But we have to step outside of what's comfortable and familiar in order to experience that. So that's where that, taking a step into the unknown can be the best decision you ever made.
Right. Last week I had Laurel Mall on the podcast, and she talked about her own experience with fear, and she went through 30 different experiences where she intentionally turned towards her fear. And it's just beautiful because this really dovetails with that, and the idea that fear can be perceived as clues, almost like guideposts. Instead of running away from it, looking at the fear and seeing what it's pointing you towards. And it's an interesting, I think, paradox, because there's this sense of, you want that comfort and safety, but you can't grow if you aren't able to leave that at some point. Like there's this balance between comfort and safety and the unknown and not feeling safe.
Definitely. And we are set up to want to recreate the comfort and the safety and the familiarity over and over again. And that's what, way back in ancient times, that's what kept us safe from predators and, everything. But we are, we live in this modern world where there are so many options available to us, and we stay stuck in these little small spaces that we allow ourselves, when really, if we just step outside of that, there's so much more out there that we can be doing. But we definitely have to really face our fears. We have to kind of retrain our subconscious mind, because our subconscious wants us to stick with what's familiar and what's comfortable and is working to protect us in that way. But then when we give ourselves a new experience, when we let ourselves experience something that we didn't think we could do, it starts to retrain the way we perceive the world. And then we want more of that, I think.
Right.
Then it's like, oh, that was actually kind of exciting and fun. Let me try that again.
Yeah. So, Jocelyn, one of the concepts that you speak about, and I know that is important in your own personal experiences and in the work you do with women, has to do with, what you call the voice within. Can you speak about what the voice within is?
Definitely, yes. So there were so many years of my life. Probably, I think what really happened for me when my first daughter was born was that I finally started to hear that voice. And for so many years, I could not hear that voice at all. I read books, and heard people say you need to listen to your intuition, and I could not hear it. Now, I had a lot of fears as a child, and I had suffered from depression and anxiety quite a bit throughout my teenage years and my 20s and even into my early 30s. And so when I would hear a voice, it was usually telling me something negative. So I just stopped trusting it, I shut it down. So it's really interesting, because when I became a mom, all of a sudden, something opened up for me. Now, this, of course, happens so differently for each person. There may be different things that allow you, and I have some ideas for how to try to open up to be able to hear that voice of your intuition. But I think that's when it really started to happen for me, and all of a sudden, I had this voice telling me how to take care of this little baby. And not only that, but telling me I wanted to live my life in a different way, which was really, really scary, at that time. But it's such a beautiful thing that we are gifted with, this little voice. And this voice, I have learned, speaks in positive terms. So if you are having fearful thoughts or negative thoughts, know that is not your intuition. This voice within that wants to guide you and lead you will not speak to you in terms of negativity. It will speak to you in terms of possibility and in terms of how you can move forward. So it's so beautiful once you discover this, that of course it helps with everything, decision making and whether to move toward your fear, all of this. It's really so instrumental in being able to hear that voice.
I think that what you mentioned earlier, that a lot of things can get in the way of someone hearing this voice, knowing if what they're hearing is their intuition or if they should listen to it. And I can say from my experience, my own personal experiences, and working with clients, sometimes, especially when that intuition tells you to move towards something that terrifies you, it makes it easier to dismiss it, So I think it's interesting that your intuition will tell you positive things, and your intuition will be loving with you, but that can also require the corresponding action that might come with some fear and trepidation.
Yes. It may not always be something that seems comfortable. That's for sure.
That's a great word. Exactly. You're going to have to get uncomfortable.
Yes. Because it's trying to help you grow.
Right. And so it's interesting, like you said, we are hardwired to stay safe and comfortable. And the interesting thing here is getting more comfortable or getting into a different relationship with discomfort is actually, the doorway to possibilities.
Yeah, definitely. And opening up to the idea that, as I said earlier, that you are capable of so much more than you realize. There's a Robert Wolff quote that I really love that I would love to share. Robert Wolff wrote a book called Original Wisdom, and he lived with the indigenous peoples of Malaysia for many, many years, but he was also a psychotherapist. And so he would look at the way that these indigenous peoples lived, and then he would come back to the modern world, and he thought a lot about how the two compare, the modern world and the indigenous perspective. And so he wrote in this book, Original Wisdom, he wrote, all of our systems, and here let me just say too, he's talking about the modern world in this quote. He says, all of our systems are designed around a belief that everything is so complex and difficult to manage that we require experts to help us navigate. There are experts for every aspect of life. Everyone who does anything at all needs training, a degree, a diploma, or a license. And the result is that each of us feels powerless. There is hardly anything we can or are allowed to do for ourselves. And I think that we are very stuck in this mode of thinking. And I believe that this is what many of us are taught from early on, that you have to study hard, you have to work really hard and become an expert in something before you have any authority. And the truth is that we have access to, for one thing, our intuition, which is a source of such wisdom, such a deep wisdom from within us. And that we really need to step back and look at, the reality of the situation here is that what is available to us is so much broader than what we're typically taught. And that we really can, so if we have a longing to do something different, or if there's some kind of creative work, for example, or healing work that we would really love to do, but it just doesn't seem practical, there are ways to make that happen, and you don't have to study for 10 years and become an expert in it before you can bring it into your life and start helping other people in really beautiful ways and making your own life more fulfilling.
Jocelyn, that is a powerful quote, and what you shared, your reflections on that. I mean, I just got goosebumps when you were talking, because it's so true, and it's so sad that this, I guess the messages that we receive from society and anything external is that, you're not enough. You need someone outside of you,
Yeah.
And that not enoughness, that sense of inadequacy. Oh my gosh. I feel like I see it, in so many clients, friends, family, myself. And it's just this message again that I need to go outside of myself to learn more, to be good enough, to be loved, to be accepted. And really what that movement away from yourself, when you seek out things outside of yourself, it really just erodes your confidence even more, and your connection to your inner wisdom, that intuition, your ability to hear that voice, that connection just gets really strained and fragile, or completely broken or distorted.
Yes, definitely. And yes, I completely agree with what you're saying, and especially that as we empower ourselves to look within for the answers, that is what is going to allow us to hear that voice. when we recognize that we have so much knowledge. I mean, we have our body is so intelligent, and then we have our soul, which, everybody has different notions of spirituality, and some may or may not believe in a higher power. But we know just through science that we are interconnected with all of life, and that there is such vast intelligence in this web of life and within us, because we're a part of that. We are given these resources. So when we can acknowledge that and accept that and see the beauty there, I think that's really key to being able to hear that voice and to know that we don't have to. We don't have to be perfect, and we don't have to be an expert. We just have to be who we really are.
And I think, again, going back to the fear around this is when you are able to step into who you are, you no longer need to check with everyone if you're okay and if you're enough. And then I think you actually bring your authenticity to the world, because a lot of times when I think you check in with the world to say, is this okay? Am I okay? You will shift and accommodate to be what the world says is okay.
Yes.
And losing your version, your authenticity that you were bringing to the world, because even though you heard it and you said, okay, I want to take this and share it with the world, what was reflected back to you is, no, this is what the world wants. And then, we don't even know consciously that we're doing that.
Yes. And we give away our power in that way by, if we share a little bit of what's deep in our heart and we don't receive a positive response, then we think, oh, okay, yeah, no, that wasn't good enough. And we hide it more and more, deeper and deeper,
Right.
every time. But yeah, I so deeply believe that we each hold a key to something that the world needs, and each of us has very special talents and gifts and experiences that we're meant to share. And some of the happiest people I know are those who have said, you know what, I don't care what anyone else thinks about it. I'm going to share what I believe in. I'm going to speak my truth. I'm going to shine my light. And that can be really hard. That can be really, really scary, especially in a world where, some of these things we feel passionately may not be accepted by, the average person. But when we can really tap into what we do believe, what really is the most important to us, what really just, I say, lights us up, then we're on to something. Then we know that we can move forward with that in some way, big or small. It doesn't have to be big.
Right.
But if we just honor that in some way and say, you know what, this is special, and I'm not going to let anyone tell me otherwise.
And, I like that you said it doesn't have to be big, because actually when you're reconnecting with your inner self and starting to hear your intuition or the inner voice, sometimes it's best to start off small. I tell my clients, the next time someone asks, where do you want to eat? That's a good time to practice. Instead of saying, I'm good with wherever, actually pause, listen to what your body is saying, or any thoughts or feelings about what you feel like eating, and then say it. Sometimes as simple as that, and because if you can't check in with yourself for small things, you're definitely not going to be able to do it with the bigger things.
Yes, I think that's such a good point, to start small, because we really do receive these cues in our body and just in how we feel about so much that we don't even realize throughout the day if we're not looking for it. The answers are there.
So Jocelyn, can you share us a few examples of maybe how this can show up in individual lives, so that listeners can say, okay, maybe I can see myself in this situation or this situation where maybe there's an opportunity for me to check in with myself, connect with my intuition, and then respond?
Sure. So what's coming to mind first, and I think this is probably the most important thing to look for, is where in your life are you feeling uneasy, or are you feeling maybe restricted or tight? Because that is often, I find, the first clue that we feel, is that we just know something's not right. So it might be related to a job. It might be related to a relationship. It might be related to a situation you find yourself in often. For example, if you are, rushing about a lot of the time and finding yourself feeling very stressed. And that kind of closed in feeling or that restricted feeling sets in. That's a really strong sign to stop for a little bit and to look within and to be curious. I think that when we're getting any kind of negative feedback, like that restricted feeling, or even it can be a stomach ache, anytime something like that comes up, it's really important to be curious and to try to get quiet, try to find a little time or space to be alone where you can go within and ask your inner wisdom, what is really going on here? What is the message that I need to know? That curiosity really opens doors. So an important thing here is not to judge yourself and not to say, oh, I get so upset over little things, or, oh, why does my stomach always hurt when I walk into this place, or something like that, where you're judging yourself and downplaying that clue that you're getting. I think it's so important to be curious and open up to it and ask that inner wisdom that you have inside of you, what is it that I really need to know here? Often asking the question is really powerful. And we don't do that too often. We might think about it. We might even meditate on it, on, how can I, or like, what, I don't feel good about this, and I don't know what to do. But to ask the question, what is it that's important for me to know here? We can often get some surprising answers coming up. And the answer might not appear for you at that instant. The answer might pop into your mind, 6 hours later, or the next morning when you're in the shower getting ready for the day. A lot of inspiration tends to come at that time early in the day. So, for that, to be curious, to be open, but to be looking within, to be looking for the answer that's within yourself, and see what comes up, see what kind of messages or even signs or symbols might emerge to guide you.
It's so simple, the process you're describing, but it's so complex and deep. And when you follow, these messages from within, the information that your intuition brings to you is so rich, so meaningful. It's really like, this is your map. This is the direction for you to move forward. And I just think it's beautiful how being able to pause, ask these questions, see what's revealed, can shift the experience in your direction.
Yes, definitely. And you may even get an insight as to how you can take action to change it. And this is so important too, is to take action. So, depending on what the situation is, could be setting boundaries. If you have a certain friend who's just always got something negative to say, and your stomach hurts every time you're around your friend, you may choose to speak up then. And once you check in with yourself and realize that there's nothing wrong with you, it's that your being doesn't want to be subjected to that kind of negativity. And so maybe then you can gain the courage to, through listening to that inner wisdom, and you can speak up to your friend and say, hey, I'd rather talk about something that, makes us feel happy. Let's talk about, vacation or something. Or on a more serious note, if it's around your job and if it's really not healthy for you to be in the position that you are, then maybe you get the courage to look for a new job, look for a change to a different department, or some way to get out of any negative situation. The taking action part is really important, because we can hear that voice and start to recognize it. And then the next step is to do something that honors that voice and that honors what you know to be true about yourself. And again, it can be a very small action, and that's fine. But to do something to really move toward what will be more fulfilling for you.
And I think I also just want to add to what you've shared, for those who are listening and this is resonating and they are wanting to connect more with their intuition, that this is a process, and the baby steps that are taken, even to just listen to the message and how you're feeling, this can be profound in and of itself. And when you're ready, that will be the time when you will be able to maybe take that step further. But sometimes just paying attention to what's coming up and starting there and noticing it is a huge first step.
Yes, absolutely. And be patient with yourself in that process.
Yeah, that's a good one. That inner critic, right, can come out.
Always pops up.
Yeah. Jocelyn, I wanted to ask you, in what we're talking about right now, how do you address, I guess I'll call it the people pleasing or the nice person syndrome, where, someone struggles with maybe saying how they truly feel, expressing their feelings, asking for what they want, because it might upset someone or it might anger another person, or this could be a parent, it could be a partner or spouse, and there's a real fear around saying something that'll be hurtful or that this person will reject them. Or sometimes, but that's not very nice for me to do that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this one's so important to me because that's how I was for a long, long time, where I would kind of go, just go with what the crowd wanted, go with what the other person wanted. I didn't want any conflict. I didn't want to cause any ruffles. And I thought that I was happy with that. I thought everything was fine. But as I began to be able to hear that voice and to begin to listen to that voice, I realized that we each have things that we really need to be whole, to be fulfilled, to be empowered. And I realized that I was stifling some of those things that were really important to me. And so this took a long time. So again, be really patient with yourself through this process. But I started to realize that, so for one thing, it's not good for our health to hold these things in, especially if it's over a long time, like if it's something with your spouse or your partner that, that you always want to speak up about, but you always hold back. And so, yes, it's good to be generous in your relationships, right? But we need to also, above anything else, we need to be true to ourselves. Because when we're true to ourselves, it's better for our health overall. It's also better because when we speak up and when we let something be known that is true to us, then there's the chance to talk about it. There's the chance to converse, and maybe you can meet in the middle somewhere with somebody, or maybe they'll even say, oh my gosh, I never saw it that way. Sure, that's fine, and all these years you've been holding back from saying it. But really, when we express ourselves and when we can move more into alignment with the truth of our soul, with what's most important to us, then we're going to be able to be a better partner, a better mom, better at our job, better at everything, and kinder to ourselves, because we're being honest, we're being open, and we're really expressing that which is within. I think in childhood, many of us were taught this, that we need to be nice, especially as girls or women, right? We need to be polite. We need to not be too loud in many cases. Depends on the culture, right? But we're told to kind of keep things in, and we carry that with us throughout our lives. And so when we can, open up, start hearing that voice and start realizing what we really want, what we really need out of our relationships or different situations, and speak up about that, it is very freeing. It brings us freedom of expression, freedom to be who we really are, and the freedom to reach a new level with that, maybe, that other person, or in that situation where it can actually be better for everybody.
Yeah, one of the things that I tell clients is that when you're not able to express how you really feel or ask for what you want in a relationship, and this just goes on and on for years, in actuality, the person who you're in relationship with isn't even really in relationship with who you are, because you're not showing up. You're not the person that they are in love with or in a relationship with or interacting with is not sharing these really important parts of who they are. So they only get a surface or a partial experience of you. And so even though it's terrifying to step out of the safety, avoiding conflict and upsetting other people, it gives the opportunity for others to interact with who you really are. So it encourages you to step into your own authenticity.
Yeah, definitely. And I know for me too, part of that, and in particular with my spouse, that was how I had always been in the relationship. I had always been very reserved. So how to change who you are, who you've been to this person for so long, that is really scary. That is really scary. So eventually for me, the knowing that I needed to express myself overcame that fear. And we have to remember that we're human, we're living beings, we're meant to grow and evolve throughout our lifetime. And so even if you're in that situation where you've been this person for so long, but you feel you're opening up to new things, you're changing, you're ready to really express who you are, and it may be a little different from who you used to be, and that's really good, and that other person might actually be really happy and excited about this, the newness of what you're bringing into the relationship.
I was laughing to myself when you said that because I can relate to in my relationship where several years later, finally saying how I really felt, or in my own frustration, maybe it just fell out of my mouth. And, my husband looking at me like, who are you? This never bothered you before.
Right. Yeah, we're always evolving, and we need to really honor that in one another and ask each other to honor that, especially in like a spouse relationship, so we can keep growing together and not grow apart.
So earlier in the conversation, Jocelyn, you mentioned that this process of hearing the voice within can involve retraining our subconscious mind. Can you speak about that a little bit more?
Yes, definitely. So as I mentioned, the subconscious mind is there to protect us. It's there to keep us in what is safe and familiar and comfortable. But we have a need to grow and evolve and to become something more, to expand our knowledge, to expand our experiences. And often our subconscious, meaning very well, will step in and generate fear and prevent us from taking those steps into growing and evolving. And so when we can recognize that, when we can see, and say, you can even say, okay, my subconscious mind, I know you're trying to protect me, but I need to move beyond this now and step into that fear, as we were talking about earlier. Because when we step outside of our comfort zone, it's definitely scary. But outside of our comfort zone is where growth and development and expansion occur, so that we can welcome in an entirely new experience.
Jocelyn, what are some ways that a person can begin to hear the voice within and begin to connect with this part of themselves again?
Sure, I would love to share that. So to kind of preface that a bit, I think in our modern world, we have become very disconnected with many of the sources of wisdom or information that have guided human beings for many, many millennia. And so the primary one of those being a connection with nature. I think we've all experienced, on a hike where you reach the top of the mountain and you just see the beauty and you're just completely awestruck and have a realization that, that what's possible for all of us in this life is bigger than we know, and that there is so much beauty and intelligence available to us. So that is the first way that I recommend that we begin reconnecting with our intuition, is by getting out into nature. And even and so, if you live in the city, that's fine. Even if you can't leave your house, that's fine. You can have plants inside, for one thing. You can have plants or animals. A pet, a cat or a dog is a beautiful way to access this. If you have a view of trees, or flowers, that's wonderful. If you live in the city and you can get outside, even just, nature is still all around us, even in the city. Look up at the sky and the clouds during the day, or look up at the stars and the moon during the nighttime. Look at the trees that are growing. Look at the gardens. Look at even the grass that's popping up from in between the sidewalk, And if you are in a situation where you can get out into the forest, into the to the seashore, any natural places, that's really, really wonderful. And just spend some quiet time with whatever part of nature you have available to you. And look for the beauty there. And look for the life and the intelligence that is there. If this is through spending time with your pet, with a cat or a dog, for example, look at the intelligence there. Look at how much that animal loves you unconditionally and wants to be there for you. And if you're outside in the forest, listen to the bird song and see how the trees grow in so many different shapes and sizes. So all of this is helping us to reconnect with where we originally came from, and to reconnect with other beings, and to kind of sense our place here, that there is so much available to us. And a part of what's available to us, because we are nature too, is that inner voice within. So I have definitely found that as I allow myself more quiet time connecting with nature, I can hear that voice more strongly. So that is one way. And another way that is really important is to pay attention to our dreams. If you do remember your dreams, start a dream journal and write them down. Every morning when you wake up, just take a few little tiny notes, of whatever stood out from dreams from the night before. There are powerful messages coming to us in our dreams. Very powerful messages. And if you feel intrigued by that, I would recommend that you work with somebody who's an expert in dreams, because they can add a depth of figuring out the symbols. A lot of what comes to us in dreams is in symbols, or it's not, you can't translate it literally, but there can be very powerful messages there. And if you don't remember your dreams, which was the case with me for many, many years, if you don't remember your dreams, set the intention to remember them. And what I will often do is I always fill a glass with water and set it on my nightstand before I go to bed. And I drink the water first thing in the morning. That's a health practice that I've developed. So if you set the intention that when you drink that glass of water the next morning, you'll remember some part of a dream. Often you will. It's really amazing. So, or even just by placing a little, a journal, that's your dream journal, on your nightstand or beside your bed, that action will allow you to remember more of your dreams. So I definitely encourage that. The messages that we get in our dreams are very similar to the messages that we get through our intuition. They're meant to guide us and help us. And then one other thing that I want to mention is to pay attention to the natural cycles around us. So we're very accustomed to living by linear time, which is clock time, where it ticks along seconds, minutes, hours at a time, goes in a straight line from beginning to end. But cyclical time, nature time, is, for example, the cycles of the moon. So especially as women, if we start paying attention to where the moon is. Right now the moon is at its first quarter today. So you'll see about a half of a moon, tonight when you look up in the sky this evening. And the moon is waxing right now. It's getting bigger. So about a week from now, it will be a full moon. And the moon goes, every month it goes through the cycle. So 2 weeks after the full moon, it will be a new moon and we won't be able to see it. So do a little research about the moon cycles if you're interested in that, and start paying attention to how the way that you're feeling might actually be aligned with the moon cycles. For example, where we tend to be more outgoing and, we want to party when it's a full moon. We have more energy. But when it's a new moon, and that's when we can't see the moon. When it's a new moon, we tend to be more inward and emotional, and we kind of want to keep to ourselves a little more. This is a general, description that I'm giving here, but many, many women find that they're really affected by the moon cycles. So what you can get from that is, if around the new moon time you're feeling emotional, don't beat up on yourself for that. Know that you are part of the larger cycles of things. And if at the full moon you feel like you want to go out and be really social, honor that, do that, So there's the cycles of the moon, there's the cycles of the seasons, In the northern hemisphere right now it's summer, and many of us are getting outdoors more, we're traveling, we're having more chance to be with family and really enjoying that. And then in the winter, we tend to want to stay in and eat warm food and snuggle up, and to really honor where you are in these natural cycles, and to know if in the middle of the winter, I don't feel like being as outward, or I don't, or I just really want to stay in bed and read a book, to honor that and let yourself do that. These cues that our bodies give us are often very much aligned with the cycles of nature. So when we allow ourselves to follow those cycles, and we then can more easily get in touch with the cues from our body. And then from that flows naturally being able to hear your intuition.
Those are beautiful suggestions, Jocelyn, and I can totally agree with you on these being very powerful ways to reconnect with your intuition. I know that for me, when I first started working with my dreams back in 2006, it was a huge shift. I mean, they were just, so powerful, the messages from my dreams. And I remember a teacher telling me that the more you pay attention to your dreams, the more they'll pay attention to you. And as soon as I began to journal and reflect on and meditate and just, play with these images from my dreams, they really, suddenly it was just like every night, just constantly being able to connect with dreams and remember them. And I also have found that my clients who choose to work with dreams, and not all of them do, but some will want to work with them, I have to say that working with dreams almost accelerates the process. I feel like my clients who work with their dreams are moving more unimpeded towards their healing and growth.
Yeah, I definitely believe that dreams are so powerful.
And I love that you brought in, the cycles of nature and the cycles of the moon. I also track the moon cycles, and it's so true that you can just already have a sense of what's going on with you and with other people in general, like you stated, depending on where the moon is in that cycle. And I thought it was interesting what you talked about with the linear time, how linear time is almost the external authority of this is the speed or the rate that you should be moving at, and this is what it means based on this clock. And really going back to these natural cycles is connecting back to nature.
Very much so, yes. And to know that it's kind of comforting to know that, like in the northern hemisphere right now, it's summer. We just had the longest day of the year. And a year from now, it will be summer again. And a year from then, it will be summer again. And it'll be the same, but different in beautiful ways.
So, Jocelyn, what's the best way for listeners to get in touch with you and to learn more about your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way is to visit my website, so my website is Sacred Planet, but the way that you will type it in is www.wearesacredplanet.com. So it's WEARE, sacredplanet.com. And you can read about my work there. And if you go to the tab that says Life Coaching, you can read a little more about my life coaching practice and the services that I offer. And you can click there to choose a free consultation if you would like to speak with me and explore how we might work together toward what you want to create in your life.
Jocelyn, thank you so much for the gift of your time today and sharing your wisdom and your insights and your experiences. I found it very inspiring and moving, and I know that our listeners will as well.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was really a pleasure to talk with you.
Take care. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Jocelyn. One of the aspects that stood out for me is how we can sometimes look outside of ourselves to experts, loved ones, friends, for teaching, guidance, validation, and permission, forgetting about our own internal guidance system within, our intuition. Another aspect that stood out for me is how people-pleasing, avoiding conflict, can disconnect us from our intuition. One way to connect with your intuition is to have clarity around who you are, what your values are, and what matters most to you. I created an exercise that I actually use with my clients, and it's available for free on my website, called the Life Alignment Exercise. It consists of a few questions that can help you begin to identify what matters most to you and to explore how your values align with how you are living your life. This connects to intuition because your intuition is like an inner GPS system that lets you know when you are on or off course with who you are. For show notes to today's episode and for links to the resources mentioned, including the Life Alignment Exercise, please visit www.lourdesviato.com/women-in-depth. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or share with a friend. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to listen, and see you next time.